In this video, I'm going to share with you my favorite tried and tested frameworks and models for instructional design. Now, some of you will be like, hey, Anna, you forgot this. That's cool. Those are things that I actually, if I omitted them, it's probably because I never used them and nobody has ever actually come up to me and said, hey, are we in this stage of this particular framework? Yeah, there's a reason it's missing. So maybe some of you will guess which ones I've omitted after watching the video. Some are very popular, which I think we should just do away with because they are archaic and they don't help anybody. We're just paying them lip service. So without further ado, let's get into these. Now, I'm going to give you the super short version. Let me know which ones actually resonate with you and you want me to get more details into and how I've actually applied them. But now, let's get into these frameworks and methodologies that I think are going to serve you well if you are not only a current instructional designer and maybe kind of looking to trim a little bit of the things that we've been overusing that are kind of old and archaic that we don't need to use anymore. And if you're just coming into the profession, I'm hoping what this will do for you is kind of give you the reality check of what's actually being used in the real world and help you focus your research and the things that you're studying and you're trying to apply on these key elements. Okay, let's get started. First off, you should know about the 5 moments of learning need. If you're an instructional designer who really wants to be effective, you don't just design for training. What you do is you design for the 5 moments of learning need. And this is where you come in as that trusted advisor, right? Who is somebody who looks at the life, basically the life of a person from when they first started at a company. Sounds like they worked there their whole life. Whatever. Let's say in the military, they started 18 and when they retire at 65, those people go through different kinds of need as far as training, as far as support goes, as far as their development goes and growth. So the 5 moments of learning need developed by Bob Mosher and Conrad Gottfredson, basically what it does is it allows you to see where somebody is at, what kind of things they need at that point in their learning kind of career, and then how you can create those resources to help them meet their highest potential without basically saying, hey, I have to train you at every step of the way. You're actually creating resources that really augment their journey and are supporting them along that way. So definitely check out 5 moments of learning need. This is something that I have internalized. It was introduced to me over a decade ago, and now this is how I think of things when somebody comes in with a request for training, or if I see a business need out in the workplace. Okay, another model you should be very familiar with and understand is the 70-20-10 model. So this model is fantastic, and I've introduced it to groups all over the world. And one of the things that I found is that it really shifts your perspective as far as understanding what learning is, and also I think that people actually look at this model and usually they think about it all wrong. So the 70-20-10 model is that what it suggests, and I believe this to be true, is that 70% of the learning that you do is on the work, on the job. 20% is in informal kind of settings like maybe mentorship or some sort of collaboration groups or something like that. And then only 10% of the actual learning that happens in formal training situations, kind of like e-learning or workshops and things like that. And so one of the things I think that people usually misconstrue, and they're like, oh, look, see, only 10% of the work, or 10% of the learning that we do is actually in formal situations, so it's not as important. I actually think that it's the opposite, because formal training is such a small part here. It needs to be super well done. It needs to be amazing because it impacts all the other ways that people learn as well. So for me, this is something you need to really dig into to see how the other 20 and 70, the informal learning and the learning on the job, complement each other and complement this 10%. Another framework which I think is really useful is action mapping. Action mapping is developed. It's a decision framework, basically. A needs analysis framework that was developed by Kathy Moore. And the action mapping, all it does is it allows you to be another one of those basically consultants, even if you work inside the business. It allows you to look at a problem and then determine what its roots are, and then if needed, how to solve that problem, whether it is through training or some sort of a job aid intervention or something like that. So I feel like what happens is all of the theories that I've shared with you so far, like the 5 moments of learning need, the 70-20-10, all of them kind of complement each other. So when you get to something like action mapping, you kind of understand how these decisions are made, and then you can determine, hey, do I need to put training here? Do I need to put a job aid? Do I need to do a workshop? Do I need to send out an email? All those things really work in harmony. Okay, another thing I think you should understand, and this model is not talked about as far as it needs to be, as much as it needs to be, is Kolb's learning cycle. So Kolb thought that, and I think this is totally the way I think people learn, is something happens, right? And then people go, how come that happened? Why did that happen? And then as a result of thinking about this thing that they encountered, they're like, I wonder if I can do that. What are some steps that I can do to replicate that? Like, let's say you watch somebody let's say you're in a CrossFit gym and you see people climb a rope. And you watch that thing, you're like, oh, this thing happens. And you're like, oh, I wonder if I could do that. What are some steps I could take to prepare for that? And then you try and climb the rope, and then you realize maybe you failed or you didn't reach the top like the other person did. And so you take stock of what happened, another event. And then this is kind of like a continual learning loop. So, and that's my take on Kolb's. If I messed it up, that's just simply how I understand it. And I found that Kolb's is, if you think about things, if you, in that way, this is how adults learn, this is how children learn as well. But then that leads into the next theory, which is the adult learning theory. And if I can summarize adult learning theory for everybody, it's really that adults like to be recognized for the work that they've done, their prior experiences. They like those being integrated into, the current state, because they come in with not only experiences, but also lenses of how they see the world because of those experiences. And so it is very important that you allow people to basically make that meaning for themselves through the lens that they're coming into your world with. So adult learning is just making sure that you recognize that people are coming in with all this stuff, good and bad. And then also that you make them feel valuable because you're allowing them to contribute to the training by recognizing them for what they already know and allowing them to maybe share that. So I'll get into that a little bit later, but as far as I'm concerned, that's one of the most important things about adult learning theory. The other thing is that this is another theory. This Bloom's taxonomy. It's not a theory, it's a taxonomy. So taxonomy of words, basically. As far as I'm concerned, the thing that I took away from Bloom's, and I think people get like too focused on Bloom's and specific words. Bloom's is a way for you to articulate what somebody should be getting out of a training, what somebody should be able to do after the training, things like that. And what it does is it kind of categorizes those verbs, action verbs, into categories, into levels of achievement, right? When you can go from like something very basic where you can just know something, recall it on a test, to synthesize new ideas together to create a new product. Great. So one of the things that it does help me do, if you become familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, is it just kind of allows you to say, okay, where on the range do I want people to fall in with this training? What's realistic for them? And then just makes you a little more creative with words. The thing that usually people who just go too hard on Bloom's mess up on is they use it as some sort of like, they invent, or not invent, but they add action verbs to outcomes that really aren't action verbs. And then you're like, okay, they're like, you'll be able to, at the end of this, you'll be able to create this. And you're like, well, how do I do that? How do you allow me to practice? So it's everything in moderation, everything with a grain of salt. And one of the things I want you to do is realize is that in your context, the way you're applying this, it's going to change. It's going to be useful. There's only grains of things useful to your actual context. So make sure that whatever I'm saying, you take it, but also you apply it, and you don't apply it blindly. You apply it and then you reflect and say, did that make sense? Because a lot of these theories are old. A lot of them are using models that were designed for people who didn't have a billion distractions, people who didn't do things online. And so I'm not saying that we have changed, but our methods, the things that we're using, need to accommodate for the fact that we're delivering things in a different age. We're delivering things in different mediums. And so what happens is you have to now adjust everything that you're taking into this new world with this new context. So another model that I think, this is a development model when you're developing e-learning products, because that's what we do. We really develop software as e-learning designers, is SAM, which is developed by Dr. Michael Allen. This is the successive approximation method, which basically what it is it's this beautiful way of saying, I'm going to craft something, and as I get feedback, I'm going to improve on it. And that cycle of moving from something that's imperfect and imprecise and through feedback becomes more and more refined. That's basically what you're doing. Successive approximation is you're getting closer and closer to what it needs to be. And the reason I love that model is because I think other models assume that you know all the variables, assume that you know all the outcomes, and assume you know all the feedback. And then what you do is you put out a product and you think it's going to be good. But with successive approximation, you know your thing is going to be terrible, and all you're doing is you're giving somebody something to critique so that you can get it, 10% closer to what it needs to be with every iteration. So that's why I think it's a great model. And especially if you're designing e-learning, this is something you should embrace. The CCAF model, also developed by Dr. Michael Allen, context, challenge, activity, feedback. So all it is just a very simple way for you to make sure that you have all the elements in your online activities to make a really good interactive experience. And so that model, as far as I'm concerned, if you just follow that, look more into it, it'll make sure that you are not missing any of those elements that help people get the most value out of scenario-based questions and scenario-based experiences. So what I wanted to finish this off with is kind of a framework that I developed for myself years back. And it's not that this framework is anything new. As you can see, everything that I use, everything that I've used in my work is taking other people's work, other frameworks, and then actually applying them in the context of my reality, which, like I said, changes because things evolve. But what I wanted to do is just maybe share this simple acronym with you so that when you're working, you can kind of remember, do I have all of these elements, or can I incorporate all of these elements in order to create a really good experience for somebody? So the acronym is ACME. I know it sounds weird, right? We're like, wait, Anna, we've already had this. So ACME stands for active learning, collaboration, mastery, and engagement. Okay, let me just quickly go through what I mean by that. So active learning. For me, active learning is the fact that somebody is able to make meaning for themselves out of the learning. So that means that you're asking questions. That means that you're asking them, especially with adult learning, which is my focus, is you're asking them to integrate the past experiences into the new ones. And so that they scaffold those together, and basically they're integrating it with what they've already brought along to move forward, and it makes sense to them. So I think active learning is the act of making meaning out of the world. And are we doing that by asking profound questions instead of dumping things onto people? Is you're asking them to create those analogies and metaphors and experiences. Now, C, collaboration. After somebody's worked on something or made meaning for themselves, are there opportunities for them to collaborate with other people to make meaning out of their own stuff, to get a different perspective, to see how they would have handled the same situation differently, or how they would have answered that customer differently. So I think those things are very valuable. And so even if all of your things that you develop are e-learning experiences, look for ways for people to collaborate so that, let's say, after they do an interactive scenario on their own, that they can then come back and maybe have a debrief session with other people to discuss how they felt about that situation, what other alternatives they would have thought of or they thought of while they were working as that character in that scenario. So that's very valuable as well for amalgamating all of those information. Now, M stands for mastery. And mastery to me, through my Anna eyes, is that what you're doing is you're not only allowing people to go through the experiences more than once, especially when you're doing something like scenarios or interactive stories. You want people to feel like it's okay for them to try different paths and go through something more than once to start getting those lessons from the feedback. Remember the CCAF model? You want them to start getting feedback for different experiences, for different paths that they took down your e-learning experience. And also different ways of doing that. One of the things I believe, and let me know what you think about this, but I find that sometimes when you're not ready for the information, it doesn't matter how beautifully it is presented, it doesn't matter how interactive the experience, you're simply not ready for it. And so that's why I think that people should be presented with the information and opportunities to integrate it in many different ways over at least 7 times. So like they'll get it in an email, they'll get it in an interactive story, they'll get it in a Zoom session, in a workshop, in a job aid. All those things kind of reinforce the same message, the same lessons, and people are able to when the timing is right, when the student is ready, right, the teacher will appear. So what I want to do is create opportunities for people to be exposed to the same information in multiple different media, opportunities for them to kind of, when they're ready, to click into that, and then they'll find the other pieces because they'll be ready for them, because they might have been distracted by something, they might have been going through a difficult period in their life. All those things, I haven't just wasted like a single opportunity to have them gain mastery in a specific topic. They're now ready because now they see their gap because of something that has happened. Now, E stands for engagement, and I think engagement has to do with basically creating experiences that give people autonomy. And the autonomy can be twofold. The autonomy can be outside of that experience, like allowing people to choose the format in which they want to learn, the time when they want to learn, who they can learn with, who they can collaborate with, who they can use as a mentor, all those things. And then inside the experience themselves, can they choose who they are as a character? Can they choose the decisions that will be made on behalf of that character? All those things, choices, autonomy, the setting that they can use in order to learn, whether they are a night owl, whether they're somebody who learns at work, all those things, I think, deepen the engagement because they allow people to customize those experiences to their own needs and when they are particularly ready to learn. So that to me is just kind of like, keep in mind, it's like ACME is almost like this overarching kind of philosophy of, these are the best things I can pack into these learning experiences. Am I doing that? Am I allowing them to do that? And then all those other tools that I mentioned earlier in the video are there to help you scaffold and support it. It's not like one is the silver bullet. It's that all of them support each other to create kind of a holistic experience and a perspective of the world of learning and how somebody learns in that world. And then you can apply that in an organization to make sure that everything kind of really meshes and supports each other. I hope you found that helpful. Now, if you're just getting into instructional design and you're like, whoa, I really want to do this, and maybe you're already an instructional designer, you want to figure out how to do this solo, like a freelancer or basically a consultant who does and develops e-learning for a living on their own. Now, if that's something that you're interested in and you want to know if this is for you, I'll put a link underneath the video so you can jump on a strategy call with one of my team to see if this is a fit and what kinds of things you should consider before jumping into this amazing world of learning and development. I hope you found this video useful. If there's any of these models that you really want to dig into, let me know in the comments. If there's any models that you feel I missed out that should be on this list that I'm missing out and I should definitely embrace, I'd love to hear from you in the comments as well. In the meantime, I hope you have a fabulous rest of the day. See you in the next video, friends. Bye.